By the time my daughter-in-law shoved me into open air, I had already hidden the flash drive that would prove my brother didn't just die, he was removed. It's funny that when you fall from the second floor, you have time to understand who set you up, and you promise yourself that you won't let this go unpunished. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and click the bell. We have new stories every day. Like and comment on what city you're watching from. 3 weeks ago, I sold my late brother's house and collected $2 million. Thomas Hart on paper, Tommy to me even when he hit 60, was the kind of man who kept a spare pair of boots in his truck and always bought 2 of anything he liked, one for himself and one for whoever looked like they needed it more. He drowned in his bathtub on a Tuesday. That's what the coroner wrote, accidental drowning. He'd been a good swimmer in his day, but age is a thief. Everyone nodded. Everyone except me. His widow, Claudia, cried without smudging her mascara. She also insisted, very early and very often, that we sell the house immediately because memories are heavy. It was on a quiet cul-de-sac with a walnut tree he planted the year I had my son. Claudia had never cared for that tree. She said it stained the patio. She cared even less for my hesitation, so I signed the papers and the escrow closed, and I got $2 million. My daughter-in-law Janelle heard about the money before my son did, which tells you more about their household than mine. She came over the same afternoon I told Michael, standing in my kitchen with a binder labeled Opportunity. It's a pop-up concept, Janelle said, flipping to a page with glossy mock-ups of a neon sign that read Cocoon. We acquire distressed salons, flip the licenses, run cash services on, well, the paperwork is adaptive. Uncle Ron's friend manages dozens of these. It's basically guaranteed. Guaranteed what? I asked. Profit, she said, as if it were a flavor. No, I said gently. I'm helping the grandkids with college funds, and I'm fixing the second floor. Fixing how? She asked, and the way she said it told me my refusal had hit a bruise. Opening it up. French doors. A reading nook. I'm finally taking down the old exterior wall and replacing it with glass overlooking my rose garden. I've already had the permits pulled. Demos started this morning. Janelle's smile thinned. So you're tying up $2 million in windows. In sunlight, I corrected. And insulation. That should have been the end of it. If life behaved, I'd have my contractors, and Janelle would have her binder, and we would coexist with the polite distance of women who love the same man in different ways. But that night I invited the family to dinner. Michael asked if they could bring the kids to see the construction zone, and I said yes, because I am the kind of grandmother who keeps Band-Aids in the cookie jar and kisses foreheads like it's a reflex. I told myself it would be good to show Janelle why new windows mattered more than a vague cash service. I told myself showing her the removed wall would settle something between us, as if sunlight could broker peace. I made roast chicken and lemon cake and something that looked like a salad but was mostly croutons. The kids, Emma and Noah, raced through the hallway with the fast joy of people who have yet to learn caution from consequence. After dinner, Janelle offered to help me clear the plates. She rarely offers help unless it serves her somehow. I accepted anyway. Come upstairs, I said brightly. I'll show you what's changing. The second floor was in its exciting mess stage, as my contractor Art liked to call it. One end had tarps and a skeletal frame of studs where the exterior wall had been removed earlier that day. There'll be a temporary barricade, Art had promised. We'll brace it twice over. Just be careful after dusk. The bracing was in, a waist-high run of temporary guardrail along the open span, a neat Lego of 2x4s. Beyond it, dark air, a drop into the rose beds. Imagine, I said, pointing with a fork I'd accidentally carried upstairs. Light here in the morning. And there, built-in shelves. I've kept every book your husband ever dog-eared. Janelle came close, closer than people normally stand unless they love you or need something. Her perfume smelled like peonies and a note I couldn't place, something sharper under the sweetness. She put her fingers on the temporary rail and flexed a little as if testing a trapeze. It's a lot of change, she said. I nodded. Change is what the money is for. Not schemes. She laughed, too quickly. You're still mad about Cocoon. I'm still breathing, I said. That implies opinions. Maybe in another life, she would have stepped back and rolled her eyes and made a cutting remark about stubborn seniors. Maybe I would have clucked my tongue and offered leftovers to soften her mood. But the floor had sawdust on it, and the night had deepened, and there are minutes that arrive like tests you didn't study for. I felt the push between my shoulder blades as a pressure first, firm and sudden, the way a nurse presses a bandage after a shot. The railing gave way with a crack exactly like an old tree branch surrendering to storm. Air took my body the way water takes a leaf. I don't remember screaming. I remember the sky. I remember the rush of cold blooming through my ribs. I remember thinking Rosamund will be ruined, which is a ridiculous thing to think about a rose bush when your life is busy trying to unbutton itself from gravity. Rosamund is a climber planted 20 years ago when my husband made me a trellis and told me love was a thing you teach by repetition. I remember landing, an explosion of thorns, a gasp that sounded like someone else's, and the hot, humiliating sting of sap and skin arguing about who belongs to whom. I lay there alive, which felt like indecency, while the world rearranged its furniture around me. There were footsteps, a child crying, Michael shouting something that contained my name and a prayer, and Janelle's voice, too bright for the dark. She tripped. Oh my God, she must have tripped. It was an accident. I tasted metal and dirt and the perfume of crushed petals. Somewhere in me, a very old woman who survived migraines and funerals and coupons counted her bones like buttons. Fingers moved. Toes listened. Pain was there, scratches, a bruise blooming, but nothing screamed broken. The roses had caught me like an angry net. Michael's face appeared overhead, pale and huge and 10 years old again. Mom, don't move, just stay right there. He scrambled down carefully, kneeling in the mulch. His hands hovered over me as if I were bread he wasn't allowed to slice. I'm fine, I managed, which was an obvious lie but comforting to say. Janelle stood at the edge of the garden, one hand pressed to her throat. I was showing her the view, she said to no one and everyone. She backed up. Of course, I said softly, too softly for anyone to hear. Of course I did. At the emergency room, they cleaned the scratches and told me, with something like admiration, that my bones were stubborn. No fractures, the physician's assistant said. You're lucky. I nodded. Luck is a word young people use for the miracles that old women call arithmetic, roses, angles, the physics of regret. I declined to be kept overnight. I needed to be in my house because it was my house. Janelle cried in the waiting room. Michael rubbed his forehead like the answer to a math problem lived under his skin. The only person calm was me. By the time they drove me home, I knew 3 things. 1, I had not tripped. 2, someone had loosened the fasteners on the temporary rail. The wood had not split, it had yielded like something invited to fail. I'd felt the give with my palm long before I felt air with my knees. 3, Janelle had not come to see a view. She had come to see if a story could end early. Mom, Michael said in the kitchen, voice rough with fear and something else, something ashamed. She didn't mean, she panicked, It was an accident, Janelle said. Her cheeks were blotched. I reached for you when you stumbled. I must have bumped you. I'm so sorry. In every marriage there is a language and in every family there is a dialect of denial. I could feel Michael groping for it like a rope in smoke. He wanted this night to be solvable with tissues and time. He wanted a version of me who would pat his wife's shoulder and say, of course, darling. He wanted his childhood back, where he could fall off a bicycle and I'd clap twice and make it better. Accidents happen, I said evenly. I'm tired. We'll talk tomorrow. If Janelle expected a confrontation, she didn't get one. If she expected hysteria, disappointment, the hot, familiar spectacle of a mother's wound, she got a glass of water and the quiet click of a bedroom door. When your enemy thinks you are finished speaking, that's when you start listening. I washed the dirt from my hands and lay on top of the quilt because my skin didn't want anything touching it. The house settled around me like a big animal finding sleep. In the drawer of my bedside table, under old birthday cards and a hand-drawn map to the Saturday farmer's market, was the flash drive I had copied that morning, just as escrow closed. It held two kinds of files, a scan of my brother's digital password manager, which Claudia had asked me to handle because she finds computers oppressive, and a folder of Ring camera clips Tom had shared with me months before, laughing about raccoons. The raccoons were there. So was Claudia, quiet as a thought, moving through the garage one midnight like a tourist in her own house. So was an HVAC tech who came twice the week before Tom's death, once alone, once with a helper who kept looking at the ceiling instead of the equipment. So was a bag of something gray and fine, left near the water heater, gone the next day. I had not given this drive to the police because if I was wrong, the $2 million would become a lawyer feeder and my brother's name would become a dart people threw in bars. I had not given it to Michael because he loves his wife and love can make honest men carry fables. I had not told Janelle it existed because Janelle uses information the way beavers use wood. But now I had gravity's fingerprint on my back. Now I had a reason older than courtesy. When I couldn't sleep, I knit tight, even rows that turn into something warm if you count long enough. I started a scarf for Emma, cranberry red, the color of courage. 2 inches in, my hands calmed. 4 inches in, I remembered the email I'd ignored for a month, a notification that my brother's life insurance claim had been delayed pending review. Claudia had poured me tea and blamed bureaucracy. I had believed her because grief is a hall of mirrors where every reflection looks slightly plausible. Morning brought bacon, which I cooked the way Michael likes it, and a text from him. We should get a safety inspector today. I told Janelle we need to help. Please let us come by. I replied with a thumbs up. Let them come. Let them see what a rail looks like when it screws where the oily fingerprint of a wrench. Art arrived at 9 with a man from the city who used a flashlight the way some people use anger. He crouched, hummed, took pictures. This didn't fail, he said finally. It was walked out. Meaning? Michael asked. Meaning someone loosened it by hand, the inspector said without drama. Deliberately or not, I can't comment. Janelle looked stricken and virtuous at the same time. Kids could have. Kids don't carry ratchets, the man said, unimpressed. I'll be writing this up. Michael's shoulders dropped. Janelle's mouth tightened in a way I'd seen before when a cashier asked for her ID. No one said the words they were thinking. Attempted. Harm. Who? I brewed coffee with the careful artistry of a person disarming a bomb. Accidents happen, I repeated pleasantly. Let's try to be careful. After they left, I called an old friend, someone I hadn't dialed in years because she makes a living knowing things other people wish to bury. Lena, she said in the old voice we used before we had grandchildren. I was thinking of you yesterday. How's your brother's mess? Messier, I said. I need to know how Claudia spent last October. And I need phone records for anyone who set foot in Tom's house the week he died. Are we talking curiosity or court? She asked. Court, I said. Eventually. While she worked, I worked my own phone. The HVAC company put me on hold and then, after a suspiciously long silence, said their tech no longer worked there and no one by that name had ever been assigned to my brother's address. The water company sent me an automated list of service orders going back 2 years. A week before the drowning, there'd been a pressure check no one remembered requesting. The insurance company's delay became less like paperwork and more like an alarm. There'd been a switch of beneficiaries 3 months prior, from estate to primary spouse exclusive, witnessed by a notary whose office did not exist. Claudia had explained it away with a flutter of hands. Tom hated paperwork. She was streamlining, she said. She was streamlining him right off the page. At noon, my friend texted, "Coffee? I'll come to you." She arrived with a folder that smelled faintly of cigarettes and printer ink. Inside were screenshots with dates and times and names that clicked like puzzle pieces. Claudia had called a number listed to a restore/remodel consultancy 6 times in the week before Tom's death, a consultancy that shared a registered agent with a company called, of all infuriating coincidences, Cocoon Holdings, LLC. Janelle's neon dream had a real cousin, and it lived in the same legal swamp. Don't say anything yet, my friend advised. Let them keep thinking you are grateful and clumsy. I am many things. Gratitude is a muscle I exercise daily. Clumsiness is not my brand. but I could wear it like a shawl if it kept the cold off long enough. That evening, Michael came alone, eyes tired, carrying apology like a grocery bag that was starting to tear. "She's terrified," he said. "She swears she tripped and I want to believe her." "Of course you do," I said. "You love her." "I love you too," he said quickly. "And you're my mother. I don't know how to stand in the middle of this." "On your feet," I said. "That's how." He laughed once, a small, broken sound. "You always say something that sounds like advice and turns out to be directions." "Then follow them," I said. "And don't bring her around the second floor until the glass is in." He nodded. At the door, he hesitated. "Mom," he said, if you thought she did it on purpose, would you tell me?" I looked at my son, the boy who used to fall asleep in the back seat with his mouth open, the man who had forgotten to call on my last birthday and then apologized with flowers Janelle chose. I looked at the man who would have jumped after me if the roses hadn't caught me first. "I would tell you when I could prove it," I said. That night I didn't knit. I opened the flash drive and watched the raccoons. And then I watched the clip dated 3 days before Tom died, Claudia in a white sweater, standing in the laundry room with a man in a baseball cap, talking low. She handed him cash from a tea tin I had given her 2 Christmases ago. He pocketed it without looking. He pointed at the water heater. She nodded. They moved like people in a lesson. I paused the frame and leaned close. There was a small tattoo on the man's wrist, a crescent moon with a notch in it. I'd seen that tattoo earlier that day on a stapled photocopy in my friend's folder, pulled from a courthouse camera, still of a man testifying in a different case about off-the-books home service. I whisper laughed, a sound you make when horror finally reveals its face and, like a rude guest, uses your good towel. I emailed the clip to myself twice. Then I made a copy of the drive and tucked it into my knitting basket underneath the skein of cranberry wool. The house was quiet enough to hear the heater click. The roses outside, brave things, rested after saving a foolish woman who had believed in manners around malice. In the morning I did something that would look, to anyone desperate to believe me silly, like an old woman's ritual. I baked lemon cake again, because the house still smelled faintly of hospital antiseptic and citrus chases ghosts. Then I wrote 2 letters in tight, tidy script. One went to the insurance company's fraud division with a USB drive in a padded envelope and a note that said, "Please compare beneficiary change dates with video timestamps enclosed." The second went to a detective who once pulled my husband over for a burned-out brake light and later sent him a sympathy card when he passed. It said, "We should talk about Claudia Hart and a crescent moon tattoo." By noon, Janelle texted that she wanted to come apologize properly. She wrote it like she was RSVPing to guilt. I told her I'd be busy with contractors all day. She said she could come by after dark. I told her that would be perfect. At 4, my friend called. "You were right to send the insurance letter," she said. They flagged Claudia 2 years ago in a different county. She tried to change her first husband's beneficiary 3 weeks before his accident. Got denied that time. Different insurer. Same notary. I sat very still and watched the light move across my kitchen table. I thought about Janelle standing at the edge of the open span with her hand on the guardrail, checking its give. I thought about Claudia's mascara not moving when her voice did. I thought about $2 million and how many lives people are willing to spend trying to own it. "Come at 8, I texted Janelle. "I'll make tea. We can talk." "Thank you," she replied. "You're a bigger person than I am." I didn't answer. I set 2 cups on the counter and put the kettle on and made sure every downstairs light worked. Then I went upstairs alone and stood at the opening where the wall would one day be glass. Night had already claimed the garden. The roses looked like shadows in black dresses. If Janelle came to confess, I would listen. If she came to test another rail, I had a surprise waiting that would change the temperature of the night. I don't like drama. I like results. So I had invited one more guest, quietly, the way you invite a doctor to a birth without telling the baby. He was on his way with a warrant that had taken exactly 6 hours to be signed once a certain detective learned what a crescent moon had been doing in my brother's laundry room. When the doorbell rang at 8:02, I lifted the kettle and felt the old steadiness in my hands, the one I inherited from a mother who could carry boiling water across a linoleum floor while 3 children argued and never spill a drop. I opened the door to Janelle's careful smile and the faintest trace of panic in her eyes. Behind her, headlights turned into my driveway, slow and lawful. "Come in," I said. "Let's finish what you started." Janelle stepped over the threshold with the careful energy of a person measuring a room for danger. She wore soft flats, a pale sweater the exact pink of a seashell, and that perfume with the sharp afterthought I still couldn't place. She glanced toward the staircase and then away, as if abashed to have a body that remembered its own crimes. "I brought scones," she said, as if flour could unmake gravity. "From that bakery you like." "Set them down," I said. "The kettle's singing." She put the box on the counter and smoothed her hair. "Elena, about last night." The doorbell rang again. I didn't look surprised. I didn't look anything. I have learned that a neutral face is a locked drawer. Most people will waste their strength trying to pick it. The woman on the stoop had a compact posture and a badge she kept in a leather case like a prayer book. "Miss Hart," she said, voice pleasant, professional. "Detective Mara Singh." We spoke on the phone. "May we come in?" We. 2 plainclothes stood behind her, and a third, the city inspector from the morning, wearing a different jacket and the face of a man who had found a number he meant to dial. They were not loud. They were not theatrical. They smelled faintly of coffee and copier toner. Janelle's fingers curled twice on the counter and flattened. "Is this about the?" She gestured up toward absence. "It's about a number of things," Detective Singh said mildly. "To me, you wanted everyone present." "I did," I said, pouring hot water over tea leaves as if this were the weekly book club. "Sugar, Detective?" "No, thank you." We sat at the table that has known my son's homework and my husband's laugh and one fight so old it has no teeth left. The detective placed a white folder in the center and tapped it with one finger like a pianist finding middle C. "I appreciate you letting us come while this is fresh," she said. "We'll be efficient." MS. Hart, she nodded to me, provided us with video clips from her late brother's home cameras. "She also sent a letter to your late brother's insurer, which was forwarded to our office this afternoon by their Special Investigations Unit." She drew in a breath that calibrated the room. "We are opening a formal inquiry into the death of Thomas Hart. There are anomalies. We expect to have more to say within days. In the meantime, we have questions about last night's incident on your second floor." Janelle folded her hands, laced and unlaced them, then set them flat again as if she'd been scolded by an invisible teacher. "I've already told Elena and Michael it was an accident." I tripped. I reached out to steady her and she must have moved wrong. "Those temporary railings are tricky." The inspector's eyebrows lifted a fraction. "Temporary railings don't unscrew themselves." "I didn't unscrew anything," Janelle said quickly. Detective Singh didn't argue. She slid a plastic sleeve out of the folder and laid it on the table. Inside it, photographs of the 2x4 rail, close-ups of the screw holes. "These are from 9 this morning, taken before the contractors resecured your safety barrier. The wood shows fresh tool bites around the fasteners. The screw heads carry a thin film of petroleum jelly, the kind you'd use if you wanted the metal to turn with less squeal. Someone prepped those screws for a quiet removal." Janelle trod water without moving. Kids do not carry petroleum jelly in their pockets for construction," the inspector said. "And if they did, they'd smear it like frosting." "This is absurd," Janelle said, softer, more practiced. "Are you accusing me of something?" "We're asking questions," Detective Singh said. "When did you last handle any tools in the vicinity of the second-floor renovation?" "I don't touch tools," Janelle said, almost laughing. "I get manicures." "Then we'll be quick," the detective said. "Where were you yesterday between 2 p.m. and 6? "Home," Janelle said immediately. "I did a Zoom call for a vendor. I picked up Emma at 4. Ask Michael. He was there at 5. The detective nodded. "We will." "And in the morning?" "I went to Pilates." "I have a receipt," I said mildly. "The bakery stamped the scones box at 10:49. Your Pilates class ends at 11. Janelle flinched so subtly I might have doubted myself if I hadn't learned to watch flies twitch before they drown. "You're checking my scone schedule now?" "I'm a grandmother," I said. "We notice snacks." Detective Singh laid down another sheet, a still frame of a doorbell camera from the neighbor across the street, bless Linda and her love of gadgetry. It showed Janelle, earlier that day, striding toward my house carrying, beyond the binder I'd mocked, a small canvas tool roll, the kind given as promotional swag by hardware stores too proud of their logo. "That's not mine," Janelle said. "It was in your hand," the detective said. "I was returning it to Michael's toolbox," Janelle said, less sure now. "He leaves things around." It looked messy. "Does Michael own a ratchet set with a red handle?" the inspector asked, leafing through his own notes. Janelle's mouth opened, closed. "I don't know." "He doesn't," the inspector said briskly. "He has blue-handled tools. The red-handled ratchet we photographed on your counter at 9:30, the one you moved when you made coffee, do you remember that? Your phone reflected in the kettle lid. It caught the handle." He tapped the photo. "We can show you if you like." Janelle stared at the glossy surface until her eyes gave her away. She was deciding whether to fight the evidence or fight the clock. "Before you answer," Detective Singh said, tone polite as a church usher's, "I need to advise you that you're not under arrest. You are free to leave at any time. However, we would like to ask you voluntarily to come down to the station later and clarify timelines. We'll also be seeking your consent to examine the shoes you wore last night and the clothes, as well as any tools on your property that could match the transfer on these screws." "Transfer?" Janelle repeated. The detective smiled slightly. "Petroleum products. Skin oils. Trace. Nothing dramatic. But useful." Janelle's gaze flicked to me, and for a heartbeat I thought she might apologize by accident. There are rare people who can change course without losing face. Janelle is not one of them. "I'm calling Michael," she said crisply. "Please do," Detective Singh said. I poured her tea anyway. Her hands shook. She didn't touch the cup. He arrived in 14 minutes, jacket unbuttoned, face set, the expression of a good man who has been asked to choose between gravity and breath. He kissed my cheek and stood by his wife without touching her. His eyes said, "Tell me what to believe." Detective Singh repeated what she'd said, without menace. Michael listened the way he used to listen to math in 5th grade, politely, yearning for a sum that made sense. "My wife wouldn't hurt my mother," he said. "I know," I said. "Your wife thinks she wouldn't." Janelle swung to me, anger finally lifting its head. "What does that mean?" "It means you didn't wake up yesterday telling yourself you were going to push a woman with the same blood as your children," I said, voice steady. "It means you walked a slope and told yourself you'd stop before the cliff. And it means you missed your mark." Michael exhaled a sound that was half a name and half smoke. "Elena." I looked at Detective Singh. "May I?" She nodded. "Janelle," I said. "Claudia called the consultancy that shares an agent with Cocoon Holdings 6 times the week Tom died. She hired a man with a crescent moon tattoo to come to my brother's house. He stood in the laundry room and took cash from a tea tin I gave her, and he pointed at the water heater like a magician explaining a trick. Tom drowned in his tub on a night when the water ran scalding hot and the house stank faintly of something no one could name, because grief messes with your nose. The bag of gray powder in the garage that disappeared the next day, do you know what that was? I don't either. But a lab might. My letter to the insurer woke their computers up. They called the detective. The detective got a judge to give permission to look at the money that walked and the calls that shouldn't have been made. Tonight, other officers are in Claudia's house with questions and paper. You can help yourself by telling the truth about what you know of her and that consultancy. Or you can keep acting like this is a misunderstanding in a kitchen. The room held a moment the way a lung holds air. Michael's hand found the back of a chair, then left it, as if even furniture might implicate him. Janelle blinked. Her mouth formed a soft word I didn't catch. If she were the heroine of a story, she'd cry now, or confess in a way that left her halo slightly tarnished but retained. But Janelle is not a heroine, and real people do not follow arcs. They careen. "She told me you'd be unreasonable," she said finally. "She said you'd sit on the money like a dragon." "Claudia?" I asked. Janelle's jaw clenched. Silence can shout. Michael closed his eyes. The detective's phone vibrated. She glanced at it, then at me. "Excuse me." She rose and stepped a foot away because courtesy is muscle memory for her, even when she is carrying the night in her pocket. We waited. The kettle ticked, cooling back into itself. Janelle stared at the tiny chip in my countertop the way guilty people look at minor flaws they wish were crimes instead. Detective Singh returned and took her seat. Ms. Hart, she said to me, our team executed a search at Claudia Hart's residence. We have retrieved a home notary kit matching the commission number on the beneficiary change for your brother's policy. The notary stamp appears to have been altered to that number. We also found a ledger with entries for restoration services and initials that match your brother's first name. Additionally, a phone registered to Ms. Hart shows messages with a contact saved as R.R. consultant detailing scheduling around your brother's last week, including a note about, he likes baths around 8 p.m., confirm access. We've taken Ms. Hart into custody for questioning. Michael touched his lips with his fingers like a man about to pray. She didn't do anything, Janelle said quickly, reflex more than plan. She's grieving. People were taking advantage of her. Please don't, I said quietly. You don't have to save someone else's disguise. Detective Singh folded her hands. We're not asking you to incriminate yourself, she said gently. We are asking you to explain your contacts with Cocoon Holdings or any of its associated entities, including this restore/remodel consultancy, and any interactions with tools or with the safety barrier on your mother-in-law's second floor. Janelle chose a side. I don't know anything about restoration, she said, voice flattening into the brittle resilience that had webbed her life as long as I'd known her. I pitched a salon concept. Elena hates me for it. She thinks I'm a drain. She's been undermining me since before the wedding because I didn't. Look. I bought scones. That's who I am. I bring scones. There are sentences that are less about defense than about the mask a person wears when no one is watching. I bring scones was a mask sentence. It told me she believed thoughtful presentation could substitute for repair. Do you know a man with a crescent moon tattoo? The detective asked. No, Janelle said too fast. I mean, lots of people have tattoos. Did Claudia ever mention to you that she was having trouble with the life insurance? The detective continued. No. Did you ever meet her at the coffee shop on Broome? The detective asked, 2 days before your mother-in-law's renovation began? Janelle flinched. We're family. Families have coffee. You used to call her Claudia, I said. The last 3 months you started calling her CLO. I thought it was a new bond. Now I wonder if it was a password. She looked at me then with something unguarded, fascination, the kind you feel when you realize the person you underestimated has teeth. The detective's phone chimed again. She glanced down and her face rearranged its furniture to make space for news. Our team found, in a storage unit registered to an associate of Ms. Hart's, she meant Claudia, a lockbox containing blank durable power of attorney forms, multiple notary seals, and cash. There is also a tool roll with a red-handled ratchet. We'll test for trace residue. Janelle held very still. It's astounding how quiet truth can be when it lands. Mrs. Hart, Detective Singh said to me formally, shifting names like a chess move, we're going to ask Ms. Bass. Janelle's last name had been absorbed in marriage, but remained stubborn on government paperwork, to come with us now. Voluntary would be easiest. If not, we can secure a material witness order. She is not under arrest at this moment. But she is central to a chain of events that requires clarity. Mr. Hart, she turned to my son, you may accompany her. Michael looked at me. The boy in him begged for me to say something that would pull his wife out of the net without tearing it. The father in him saw his children sleeping down the street without an inkling of how adult decisions can wake houses. Go, I said. Tell the truth. Michael nodded, once, the way his father used to when he committed to fixing something that would take all weekend. He put his hand on Janelle's elbow. She stood as if she had remembered how to use her knees just this second. At the door, she turned back. You think you're better than me, she said, almost conversational. You think you never wanted anything ugly. I like sunlight and books, I said. People want ugly when they believe there's no other way to feel safe. Janelle smiled a small, cold smile that made me sad in a way I don't have a word for. I didn't push you, she said. I studied you. The night will remember this differently. The night, I said, has cameras. After they left, the house exhaled. Detective Singh stayed, making a careful list of what she needed from me: copies of emails, the original flash drive for custody, the name of my friend who had pulled public filings, though the detective warned me she'd have to source her own copies through proper channels. While she wrote, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number that had to be Claudia's. "Why would you do this to family?" It was accompanied by a photo of Tom and me at 17, cross-legged on my mother's linoleum, a bowl of cherries between us like a treaty. I stared until the world lost its edges, and then I sent it to the detective. She didn't need my grief. She needed the threat folded in its corners. "Are you all right to be alone?" she asked when the forms were done and the folder thick with the night's work. "I've been alone before," I said. "I keep busy." I knit. Detective Singh smiled. "I'll have a car on your street for the next few nights. You won't see them, but they'll be there." "I'm not afraid," I said. It was true in the way mountains are true. Slow, old, bone deep. "I believe you," she said. "Fear and caution aren't synonyms. Sleep if you can." After she left, I walked upstairs to the vanishing wall and stood where the French doors would one day pour light. The roses down below glowed fat and bruised in the porch light. I whispered thanks to Rosamond, to the trellis my husband built, to the mundane miracles of wood and thorn and the way a body knows how to tuck itself into survival. Sleep came in bent pieces that fit like tile. I woke at 2 to a sound I didn't recognize and realized it was silence shaped by the absence of my son's name on my phone. He would call when he could. Or he wouldn't. Either way, morning would come. It did. The kettle did its honest song. The newspaper thumped as if unaware that print is supposed to be dying. I read the obituaries, as I do, to keep my humility measured. At 9, a knock. Not the police. My friend, Ruth, the one with good cigarettes and better sources, carrying a paper bag like a visiting nurse. "You need distraction," she said cheerfully. I brought bagels and a story. "I'll take both," I said. We ate in companionable bites, the way women who have shared history eat, efficiently, without defensiveness about butter. "The consultancy Claudia used," Ruth said, dabbing her mouth, "is a hub. They've been investigated twice for predatory contracting scams on insurance claims after little disasters. Roof, emergency here, crawl space, mold there. They push paperwork harder than hammers. The same registered agent attaches to more than a dozen shells. Cocoon Holdings is the glittery one, your daughter-in-law's concept, uses it to pitch money with less friction." "Glitter hides splinters," I said. "Always," Ruth agreed. "Your brother's case fits a pattern. The powder you saw on the video, if it was what I think, I'm not going to say on your kitchen table. Let the lab name it. But the water heater angle? I talked to a retired forensic plumber. Yes, that's a thing, and he said you can adjust a mixing valve illegally, override anti-scald, set a circulator to feed hotter water faster, all while leaving it to look like a glitch. The person in the tub can't feel their feet until the heat tells their heart it's time to go. If they're drowsy, it's quicker. Or if the house is carrying fumes, their blood oxygen kisses the floor." She swallowed. "It's neat. Neat enough for people who want to pretend to themselves they don't hurt anyone." I held the edge of my table and breathed around the fact of this. I had known there was a method. Naming the outline of it made my skin tighten the way a drum skin does when a hand warms it. "Insurance pushed this forward faster than we could have," Ruth added. "They smelled a known pet." "Claudia?" I asked. "They've watched her before," Ruth said. "She's not new to paperwork that earns." We washed plates. Domesticity is a spell that keeps despair from settling in corners. At noon, Michael came. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. He kissed my head and sat, palms open on his knees like he was surrendering to a traffic stop. "She answered questions for hours," he said. "So did I. They took her shoes. They took her sweater. They took her phone. They asked how I met Claudia and when. They asked if Janelle's parents ever borrowed money. They asked if any of our friends have tattoos." He laughed once without humor. "I didn't know how many people I know have moons. Do you believe her?" I asked gently. He stared at the sugar bowl as if it might whisper something he could keep. "I don't know who she is in a crisis," he said, voice small. "I've only ever met her on weekends." "You married her Monday through Friday too," I said. "You just didn't notice the difference." He exhaled, and it sounded like surrender. "They took Claudia to Central. They said if she didn't cooperate, they'd book her. There was a moment, Mom, you would have hated it and loved it. She tried to stare the detective down. Detective Singh stared back like she was reading a label. Claudia blinked first. And Janelle? I asked. He rubbed his eyes. She said she didn't touch the rail. She said she held you and you slipped. She said they're making her a scapegoat because she's loud and because you hate her. I don't hate her, I said. I hate people treating fear as a license. He nodded, and his eyes did the thing they did when he was 2 and scraped his knee, a waterline without spill. Emma asked why Daddy was gone last night. I told her I was helping Grandma measure for windows. She said again and rolled her eyes. We both laughed then, real heaving laughter fighting its way through the debris, because children are the purest proof that life continues while you count. After he left, the afternoon had the long stretch of a road in summer. Detective Singh called at 3. We have enough to hold Claudia, she said. She asked for a lawyer. Before she did, she asked for a glass of water and said 3 sentences on the way back to the interview room. Our hallway camera caught them. I'll paraphrase. 1, she said it was supposed to be gentle. 2, she said he always took baths after the evening news. I thought that mattered. 3, she said this makes Lena's money a problem. We can't admit those if she was being questioned, but these were spontaneous utterances. The DA will decide. Lena? I asked. There are only so many Lenas tied to her life, the detective said. We assume she meant you. Assume accurately, I said. We still need to nail down any connection between your daughter-in-law and Claudia's contractor, she continued. We have timestamps on calls that suggest coordination. We'll get warrants for both of their cloud accounts. In the meantime, keep your routines boring. If anyone approaches you uninvited, call me. If anyone apologizes too eagerly, call me twice. That evening, I took a slow walk in my garden. I carried pruning shears I didn't use. I've always thought roses were honest. They offer beauty for care and thorns for fools. I touched Rosamund with gratitude and trimmed a spent bloom. As I did, Linda from across the street called over the fence. You gave me a fright last night, she said. I saw the commotion and thought, well, I thought things you shouldn't think out loud. Thank you for your camera still, I said. You have good timing. Your boy was a mess, she said, shaking her head. He loves you. He married a storm, that one did. Pretty clouds. Lightning inside. Storms pass, I said. They also leave branches, she said, and we both laughed in the sad, adult way that doesn't need punchlines. Inside, I made stew. It's too hearty for early fall, but the house wanted the smell of something that had to simmer to be good. I wrote the grandchildren notes for their lunchboxes that said the kind of things adults forget to say. You're brave when you tell the truth. You're kind when you let someone finish a sentence. You're smart when you ask the question you're afraid to ask. At 8, the phone rang. Claudia. They let her call me. Or she used someone else's phone. The number showed private, the voice did not. You ungrateful woman, she hissed, without prelude. No throat clearing. No pretense. I should have let that boy of yours throw his life away. You wouldn't know grace if it paid your mortgage. Claudia, I said, bearing her name the way you bear a splinter, if you think you can make me feel small, you didn't know me even a little. I made Tommy a home, she said, shifting to her favorite costume. I cooked for him. I reminded him of his pills. I kept his calendar. You kept the pill bottle, I said, and the calendar, and the cash, and the key to the storage unit. You kept everything except his breath. A silence like a door closing. Then, you'll lose that money anyway. They'll freeze it. Agencies like to look at zeros. They'll say you benefited, and then you can explain yourself to men in ties. If I have to testify in a paper gown, I said calmly, I'll still say your name in a room that writes things down. She made a sound that belonged in old houses when the wind pushes at winter. You were always the decent one. It's a brittle kind of pride. I thought you'd leave me alone if I gave you your cut. Your mistake was not knowing my price, I said, and then I hung up because there are luxuries I don't allow my enemies, and one of them is the last word. By 9:30, I was more tired than I wanted to admit. I went to bed with my knitting, finished 2 inches of Emma's scarf, and drifted into the soft sludge of half-sleep where you can hear the house telling you the weather. I woke to a noise that did not belong, the click of my back gate. I was on my feet before my thinking caught up. My body is old, but its alarm clocks are still wound. I moved to the window and lifted the corner of the shade. A figure moved along the fence line, not skulking so much as refusing to be seen. He was tall, ball cap low. He stepped like a man who'd been told once to be careful and never questioned it again. There was a small shape in his left hand, a tool? And when he turned to check the yard, the porch light caught his wrist. The crescent moon winked. I did a very grandmotherly thing. I dialed 911 calmly and told the dispatcher my name, address, and the reason my roses might be about to meet a stranger. I also texted Detective Singh a single word, moon. I did not go outside. I did not call out. I did not show him where I was. I stood in the dark and counted my breathing. The figure moved under the open span of second floor, paused, and then knelt, feeling at the new bracing like a cat testing a door. He shook his head once, a small gesture of annoyance, and turned toward the side of the house where the gas line sits like a stubborn vein. Not tonight, I whispered. Not in my house. Not to my life. The cruiser was so silent I didn't hear it until the red-blue bounced against my hallway. 2 officers came around from both sides of the yard, a choreography nobody applauds because the applause happens later, in relief. The man with the crescent moon reacted a beat slow, as if insulted by interruption. He bolted toward the alley. The officers didn't shout, they moved. He made it 3 strides before a fence post, and a decision met, and he was on the ground. I allowed myself to sit on my bed. Knees are honest, sometimes they tell the rest of you what you feel. Detective Singh arrived 16 minutes later, hair slightly awry, expression not. She stood in my kitchen and smelled the stew and said, "You cook when the world claws you." "I feed myself," I said. She nodded. "We have him," she said. "Name matches our earlier file. He will not see the stars tonight without bars between. We will inventory his pockets. I owe you only enough detail to sleep. He had a tool roll with a red-handled ratchet and a small bottle of something you would not want near your tea." "Thank you," I said. "You did everything right," she said. "You didn't go outside. You called quietly. You texted me a word instead of a thesis." "I've been a mother," I said. "I know how to say one word that means 10. She smiled. Then, softer, "There's more. Claudia has agreed to talk if the DA considers a deal. She is frightened in a way that looks like humility. She named the consultancy. She named the man we just pulled off your lawn. She named her role. She has not yet named your daughter-in-law. She keeps saying the young one doesn't know the difference between ideas and actions." "She knows," I said. "She may pretend otherwise, but she knows." Detective Singh did not nod. "She has the discipline not to agree with civilians. We will ask for their communications," she said. "If there is a thread, we'll pull it. For tonight, I want you to lock your doors and try the trick my grandmother swore by. 3 deep breaths, count backward from 107s, imagine a field with no corners." "I'll knit," I said. "It adds up differently, but it works." After she left, I sat with the scarf and thought about counting. I remembered my brother teaching me to skip stones and how we'd count the skips and pretend it meant the years we'd live. He won that game always, until he didn't. I thought about Janelle at my table claiming she brought scones, as if that could be immoral. I thought about Claudia saying gentle, as if harm could be domesticated by diction. In the morning, 2 things happened at once like stage directions. The insurance company called and said my account would be temporarily restricted pending their coordination with law enforcement. The woman said it apologetically, and I thanked her because she was not my enemy. Systems move how they move. And Ruth texted me a single line. "They found the notary whose seal was faked. She died last year." I went to my desk and opened the top drawer where we keep pens and rubber bands, and a map of the city for when the GPS sulks. I took out a plain notebook and wrote at the top in my tight teacher's hand, "What I have / what they can't change." Under what I have, I listed the flash drive, the raccoon clips, the bakery timestamp, Linda's doorbell image, the inspector's tool marks, the crescent moon under my porch light, the stew no one can make like I can, the names. Under what they can't change, I wrote that I didn't fall, that Tom loved his bath after the news, that Rosamund caught me, That my son looks like his father when he doesn't know what to do and still does the right thing. At noon, Janelle called. Her voice had the texture of paper cuts. They let me go for now, she said. They took my phone. They said not to leave town, like I even can. Michael thinks I should stay with my mother tonight so you can, so no one's tense. I'm not a monster, Elena. Monsters are for fairy tales, I said. Adults make choices. There was a small silence in which I could hear the hum of a refrigerator that was not mine. Then, did you send the police to my house because I asked you for money? I sent the police to your house because someone loosened a guardrail behind my back, I said. Because someone thought the smell of roses would cover metal. Because someone thought they could borrow the word accident and use it like a blanket. She breathed like she was practicing for something that would require a steady hand. Claudia called me, she said, slipped, then caught herself. She said you were trying to blame her for everything, that you were jealous of how Tommy chose her over family in the end. She said you'd try to punish us because we have ideas. She said if we worked together we could be free, her word. Free by summer. There it is, I said softly. The thing that was said out loud. A sound in the background, her mother's voice, that particular tone women use when they are about to say I told you so, but remember decency at the last second. I'm not admitting anything, Janelle added quickly, the lawyering sentence someone had taught her in a hallway. I'm saying words. Words can be evidence, I said. Ask a notary. You're enjoying this, she said, shock and accusation braided together as if they made rope. You like being righteous. I like being alive, I said. The rest is housekeeping. She hung up. I wrote down free by summer in my notebook. The phrase sat there on the page like a seed waiting to choose whether to be a flower or a weed. By late afternoon, the DA's office confirmed to Detective Singh that Claudia would be formally charged. Fraud. Tampering with safety devices. Conspiracy. The initial list was a bouquet wrapped in stern paper. More stems would be added after lab results returned. They would not yet name the sedative or the exact mechanism. They didn't need to hold her. The judge looked at the ledger, the notary kit, the consultant's contracts, the crescent moon's presence on my lawn, the clips of midnight movements, and did the arithmetic I had done sleepless at 3 a.m. News travels like wind on streets with porches. By dusk, neighbors were walking slower past my house than they usually do. No one asked a question out loud. I waved when I watered the petunias because kindness is a way to choose your own story. Michael arrived with the kids for dinner. He stood in the doorway like a man begging permission to come into his own childhood. I opened my arms and the children ran into them, and their hair smelled like summer and shampoo. Grandma, Emma said seriously, taking my hand. Daddy says the house is sick, but he's fixing it with grown-ups. Are you scared? I'm careful, I said. I do careful things. Scared comes and goes. Careful stays. She nodded like a court stenographer. Noah slurped his noodles and told me grand facts about outer space in a voice that believed him. We did the dishes together, and Michael stood with his sleeves rolled and watched his own life be steady for a minute. We're going to be okay, he said, like a hypothesis. We are, I said, like a promise. After I tucked the kids onto the couch with blankets and a documentary about bees, my house is an old-fashioned bribe. It feeds you and gives you facts. I sat with Michael at the table where so much had reframed itself. She called me today, he said. She wanted me to say something to you, something about how you used to meddle when I was a kid, and how this is the same. She wanted me to throw a fight you don't even want to have. And what did you say? I asked. I said I'm done being referee for two people who think rules are for other folks, he said. I said when we stood up in that church and promised things, I thought it meant trying even when your first thought is to cut corners. I said my mother almost dropped out of the sky. The sound my heart made then was not a metaphor. It was a physical thing, a muscle deciding to grow another layer. He looked at his hands, turned them over like he expected to find an answer written there. If she's charged, he said, if they say she did this, what happens to us? You will be the father of your children, I said. You will be the son of a woman who expects you to keep speaking in full sentences. You will be the man you decided to be when you were 12 and gave away your last piece of gum to the kid no one talked to. The marriage will be what the marriage chooses with the facts on the table. I will feed the children while you think. There will be food. There will be a roof. There will be patience until there can't be. He laughed into his palms. You work like a bench, he said. Old wood. Still holding. Stained with walnut, I said, thinking of the tree in Tom's yard, the one that used to mess up Claudia's patio. When they left, I stood at the open span again and looked out at darkness that didn't care about crimes or courts, only the feel of air on leaves. Tomorrow the glass would arrive. The workers would lift it into place and screw it down, and a barrier would become a window. You can't throw someone through glass if you aren't standing on the right side of it. That would be my only superstition. Before bed, I placed the second copy of the flash drive, my extra insurance, in a new place, inside an old VHS tape case labeled Emma's Dance Recital. It was a joke no one could be offended by. I put the case on the shelf between cookbooks and a photo album with a cracked spine. Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from a number that wanted me to think it was anonymous. A photo of my house from the alley. Then, you like cameras? Cameras like me back. I send them pictures too. I sent it to Detective Singh with a caption, Moon's friend or Moon on a borrowed phone. She replied in under a minute, we'll pull the alley camera. Gate stays locked. Light stays on. You sleep. Orders from your detective. I put the phone face down, knit 2 more rows, and let the quiet hold. In the morning, glass. Art arrived early with his crew, shoulders wide, humor wider. Let's seal this view, he said, as if the night had been a draft we could now caulk. They worked with delicate brutality, the kind that respects material while reminding it who's boss. When the panes were set and the mullions squared, the second floor filled with a new kind of light that looked very old, the way churches look even when they're new. I sat on the floor with my legs crossed and let sun find the wine-colored bruises on my shins. The house felt different. Not safer, exactly. Nothing is ever safe because other people exist, but honest. A kid could run into this light and it would hold. Downstairs, the kettle sighed. I stood, a slow grandma rise, and on my way through the hall, the phone rang. Detective Singh's voice had caffeine in it. We got the cloud backup, she said without preamble. Your daughter-in-law used an encrypted app. It's not impenetrable if the other side is sloppy. Claudia was sloppy. We have messages. Some are about hair appointments and envy. Some are about time windows. One from Janelle says, she won't give me a cent as long as she's breathing. Another from Claudia says, you'd be shocked how fast a house settles if you loosen the right thing first. Then there's a link to a video titled, Temporary Rails You Can Remove Later. Your inspector is laughing sadly as I tell you this. And then there's the one I needed. Claudia sends a contact card for our consultant with a note, if you ever need a quick fix, and a winking face. Janelle hearts it. Later she sends, he's busy tonight? Don't need him. I can handle a few screws. My hands did not shake. That is not bravado. It is a statement about what happens when anger chooses a channel and runs in it like water in a carved bed. What happens now? I asked. Now we ask the DA to add counts, she said. Now we let the system pick up the thing you put down for it. You gave us a starting place. We'll finish the map. I hung up and laughed once, an odd, triumphant sound that made Rosamund perk, or maybe that was the breeze. I walked to the second floor and touched the new glass. It was warm. I saw my reflection, a small, stubborn woman with scratches like punctuation and eyes like an old river. Somewhere in town, a woman who wore mascara well was sitting across from a lawyer, trying to be smaller than the ledger. Somewhere else, a younger woman was discovering the shape of consequences. Later that afternoon, after a sandwich I didn't taste and a phone call with Ruth that was mostly breathing, the doorbell rang with the tone of final steps. I opened the door. 2 officers. Behind them, Detective Singh. She was not smiling, because this is not the moment to. But there was something in her face like a nod you give to a plan that keeps working. Miss Hart, she said. We have a warrant for the arrest of Janelle Bass on suspicion of attempted homicide, conspiracy to commit fraud, and tampering with safety equipment resulting in bodily injury. We'll be serving it at her mother's residence in 30 minutes. Her lawyer's already been notified. I thought you should know before the evening news decided to tell you instead. I closed my eyes and in my mind saw my son's face, The children's faces, the face of my brother under a hat, Claudia's hand on the water heater, the crescent moon under my porch light. I opened them. "Dear work," I said. "I'll do mine." "And what's your work?" she asked, almost gentle. "To set a table," I said, "and pour tea for whoever's left." She nodded and turned. The cruiser pulled away with lawful speed. I stood in the doorway of my house, the haunted place that had remembered its backbone, the place that had refused to let me fall all the way, and I told it thank you with my body. I stepped back inside. On the table sat the pastry box Janelle had brought on the night she thought sugar could fix screws. I lifted the lid. They were almond. I picked one up. I took a bite. It tasted like something that wanted to be sweet and could not remember the recipe. I threw the rest away. They arrested Janelle on her mother's porch with a slow patience that made the moment feel clinical, almost merciful. She didn't struggle. She didn't cry. She folded her wrists together as if volunteering them and looked, for the first time since I'd known her, like someone who had remembered she is mortal. Michael called from the curb outside the station. "Mom," he said, voice soft as paper. They read the words. They handcuffed her. She stared at me like I could edit reality. I couldn't. "You told the truth," I said. "I told the truth," he repeated, as if trying on the fit of it. "I'm going to stay at the house tonight with the kids. Will you? Would you come by in the morning? Emma wants cereal with strawberries the way you cut them. Noah wants to know if bees have favorite flowers." "I'll be there," I said. I did go, in the clean morning that follows hard nights, with a grocery bag of strawberries and a knowledge that certain routines are better than medicine. We fed the kids, and we answered questions in structures they could carry. Why is Daddy sad? Because grown-ups get scared. Why is Mommy with the police? Because when someone makes a dangerous choice, other grown-ups step in to keep everyone safe. Will you still knit my scarf? Yes. Will the bees ever forget their home? No. Detective Singh called around noon. "We'll arraign them both tomorrow," she said. "Claudia on a larger set of charges. Your daughter-in-law on attempted homicide, conspiracy, and tampering. The Moon Man," she had earned the right to say it that way, "will be charged with a buffet of felonies and has already asked for a deal. He's less stoic after a night without his phone." "What are the words for Tom?" I asked. I had learned in the past 24 hours that I needed to hear them, out loud, in order to place them in the world where they could work. "Homicide by means of tampering and fraud in connection with a life insurance scheme," she said gently. "The medical examiner will amend the manner of death to reflect the new evidence. We will not publish the precise method. That protects us from copycats and you from people who think they are clever. The public record will say tampering with household systems." That is true enough. I thanked her for the bureaucratic compassion in that phrase. True enough. There are places where precision is mercy and places where it is cruelty. This was the first kind. The news rode the afternoon the way wind rides flags. With it came a wave I did not expect, messages from people who, for years, had silently disliked Claudia but lacked a word for the feeling. It is amazing how many things people sense and store like pantry goods, waiting to be useful. A neighbor remembered a conversation about hot water pressure. A hairdresser remembered Claudia bringing her own notary stamp to sign a salon lease and laughing about being efficient. A volunteer at the community center remembered Claudia offering to help with paperwork days and insisting on streamlining them. Streamlining. The prettiest word in a liar's toolbox. The arraignment drew a small crowd because the words were big and because people are drawn to thresholds. I sat on a wooden bench with Ruth at my side, hands folded around a pen the courthouse provided and a serenity I had to glue together minute by minute. The DA spoke the scaffolding of the case without ornament. The defense asked for time and marshaled phrases like deep grief and misunderstood opportunity, because of course they did. Claudia was immaculate even in simplicity. She wore a cardigan the color of cream and a face that had learned to be useful in rooms like this. She did not look for me. I had expected a stare, a tilt of chin, a performance. She had moved on to a different audience, the judge, the gallery, the future. Janelle looked smaller than the idea of her. It's surprising how much airtime an idea takes up compared to a person in a seat that isn't theirs. She scanned for Michael, When she found him, he didn't look away. She seemed surprised by that. He wasn't punishing her with absence. He was calling her by her name with his eyes and asking, wordlessly, whether she could say it back. Bail was set. It was not small. Claudia's lawyer argued. The judge listened like a man who knows that patience is theatrical, too, and then set numbers that made the gallery exhale. The Moon Man's bail was denied. Some people should not get a second try at the gate. After, in the echoing hall where paper is a physical presence, I felt a hand on my sleeve. A woman in a skirt suit, hair like a dark wave, introduced herself as the assistant district attorney assigned to our case. "Mrs. Hart," she said, "I'll be your point of contact going forward. There will be hearings. There will be delays you will take personally. That's normal. I can't promise speed. I can promise momentum." "Momentum will do," I said. "I'm a quilter. I understand long projects." "We'll need you for testimony," she said. "Probably more than once. Nothing flashy. Just the facts you know and the way you know them. Defense will try to make you emotional." "That's not a criticism. They have a job. Your job is sunlight." I thought of the glass upstairs, warm under my palms. "I'm ready," I said. At home that evening, Emma and Noah built a blanket fort under the new light and called it the Sun House, and the name stuck in my mind like a seed. In the weeks that followed, my life became an odd braid of mundane and extraordinary. On Monday mornings, I bought apples. On Tuesday afternoons, I met with the ADA and her paralegal in a conference room where the chairs looked like obedient punctuation marks. On Wednesdays, I watered Rosamund and whispered to her the progress of the case. Motions filed, motions denied, a lab report that named the contents of the gray powder as something dull-sounding that does terrible things when it shouldn't be near bathtubs. A second lab report that found trace residue of a petroleum product on the screws that had given way under my hands. These were not stories anymore. They were numbered exhibits. Michael started sleeping better. It happened so gradually I almost didn't see it. The first time I noticed, he was late to meet me for coffee. In the old world, that would have annoyed me. In this one, it meant he had closed his eyes and stayed there. I forgave him until the end of time. "Are you leaving her?" I asked once, when we had earned the candor of that question. "I'm leaving the version of us that believed shortcuts were love," he said. "The marriage will have to decide if anything's left once that's gone." He spoke to a therapist, then another when the first one used gentle phrases that sounded like naps. He found the nerve to say simple, difficult words to my grandchildren. "Mommy made dangerous choices. I love her. It's okay to love someone and not like what they did." He taught Emma to oil her bicycle chain and told her what we tell ourselves about maintenance is the whole story of who we become. I kept the scarf moving and began a second in a sober blue for Noah. I do not put magic in wool, but I do put prayer in rhythm. Cameras gathered outside the courthouse on the day Claudia's plea was taken. She had changed counsel. The new lawyer looked like the kind of woman who wins because she does arithmetic faster than everyone else in the room, and even she advised her client to take the deal. There were words I did not care to know next to my brother's name on the charging sheet. The DA read them in a flat voice that made them less frightening. Claudia said guilty twice, then cleared her throat and said it a third time. The judge accepted the plea. He said things about breach of trust and the sanctity of homes. He imposed years that added up to something both too small to satisfy a human loss and large enough to feel like the world had remembered to protect itself. The Moon Man pled, too, after his lawyer looked at the photos and the messages and the look in the jury pool's eyes. He will be a story in a training manual someday, a case study in how pervasive small evils become when they dress up as services. Janelle did not plead at first. There was a moment when it looked like she would insist on her innocence all the way through. Her lawyer filed motions that said I had constructed a narrative to control the family asset, as if money were a dog and I a shepherd with ambitions. The judge read the messages aloud in a hearing with a solemnity that made them feel like inscriptions. He quoted, "I can handle a few screws," then looked up at the defense table and waited for an adult to arrive. She pled after that. Attempted homicide. Tampering. A lesser count on the conspiracy tied to property fraud. There were tears in her voice, but not on her face. The agreement recommended years and supervision and restitution. It recommended a program instead of a cell for a portion of it because the DA believes that it is better for society to teach people who can be taught. I did not object. My sister-in-law had asked for mercy when she meant indulgence. The court was offering something else, a kind of strict kindness that isn't to everyone's taste. On the day of sentencing, I wore the navy dress my husband had always liked because it made me look like a captain. I sat with my hands folded and my eyes on the bench and did not look at Janelle because there are gifts you do not give a person when they have taken so much already. The judge spoke the facts as if he were laying out screws in a tray. The messages, the footage, the guardrail, the powder, the money, the tools. He said my name and my age, and the phrase landed in a rose bush, which made the entire room inhale the way people do when the world declares itself both ridiculous and precise. Then he asked whether I wanted to speak. Victim impact, they call it. I thought about saying no because I am not fond of public grief. But I have considered this for months, and I knew the sentence I wanted to put into the air. I won't give you a story, I said, facing forward so the words didn't turn into a private conversation. You already had that, and you used it for harm. I will give you a detail. My brother planted a walnut tree the year my son was born. That tree stained his patio every fall, and the stain made his wife furious because she couldn't control it. She tried to control a lot of things after that. She did not control my brother's kindness. She could only end it. I want the record to show that kindness is not a weakness, even when it dies. It can be revived in other people. It was revived in me the night I didn't fall all the way. I will spend the rest of my life making sure that is the part of the story that grows. A bailiff coughed. The judge nodded to me once, a small, human gesture that I will remember when I am old enough to forget all the names. He sentenced Claudia to years that will not be comfortable. He sentenced Janelle to fewer and different years that will still be long enough to teach. There were conditions. There was restitution to my brother's estate. There was an order that she never come near my home. Outside, reporters wanted words. I gave them none. Ruth smuggled me into her car like contraband. We drove through a part of town that remembers itself in brick. That evening, I took 2 documents from the drawer where sensible papers live. One was my will. The other was the list I once titled What I Have / What They Can't Change. I added a line to the second. They went to prison because the world sometimes remembers to be fair. The insurance company, having finished its elaborate dance with law enforcement, unfroze my account. Some of the money had to wait. Lawyers needed to be paid, and there are administrative teeth that must chew. But most of it sat, large and clean, and looked at me like a dog awaiting instructions. I took decisions one at a time. I established college funds for Emma and Noah in a way that cannot be invaded by anyone else's ambition. I donated quietly to a fund that retrofits old houses with better safety, but I did not put my name on a plaque because names on plaques feel like final chapters, and I am not finished. I paid Art's crew without haggling and told them to put their company sign on my lawn for a month. People should know who to call when they want honesty. I asked him to build the reading nook the way we had planned, and when he asked what should be carved on the little plaque at its base, he likes to leave a maker's mark where it will be dusted once a week by a person who loves books. I asked him to etch a single word: sunlight. Spring edged into the corners of the calendar. The roses pushed new leaf. On the day the first bloom opened, a letter arrived from Claudia, forwarded by the jail. It was thick, as if weight could argue for meaning. I didn't open it. I returned it to sender with a note: "We are not a correspondence." Weeks later, another letter arrived, this one from Janelle, thinner, written in small, disciplined handwriting that looked like it had been taught by someone who values Rose. I read that one because there will always be 2 children who ask about their mother, and because I owed it to all our futures to know what words she had chosen. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not throw herself against the story as if a tantrum could dislodge it. She wrote about the difference between wanting and needing. She wrote about the afternoons in our kitchen when she had felt, in spite of her prickliness, something like safety and had not known how to keep it without owning it. She admitted to the touch at my back and to the tool in her hand earlier that day, and to the way she told herself a story that made it less than what it was. She signed her name with both surnames, hers and mine, and then crossed mine out. It was a small theater of honesty, but a start. I wrote back. I told her the grandchildren were thriving and that Michael was learning to cook something beyond eggs. I told her I believe in replacing bad stories with better ones and that she should find a counselor who doesn't offer naps. I told her the strawberries were perfect this year. I did not add love. I did not withhold it either. Some words you earn by showing up over time. Summer brought hummingbirds to the rose trellis. Linda from across the street promised me she would leave her camera pointed at my gate as long as I wished. I told her to turn it toward her own lawn now. She'd earned a little self-regard. She refused. Let it be my new hobby, she said. Neighborhood angels with doorbells. On a Saturday, we held a small memorial for Tom that was not officially a memorial because official things are sometimes too gelled. We invited only people who had loved him without paperwork. We told stories, his spare boots, his laugh in the kitchen when the pie failed, the year he and I decided to teach ourselves to make cheese and nearly smoked the whole house trying. We planted a young rose at the base of the walnut stump at his old house, which the new owners allowed because they are decent. We named the rose Tom's Way. I will visit it once a season with my shears and a story. In the golden hour that follows grief when you haven't earned happiness yet but can smell it, I sat in my reading nook under the plaque and made a list. Not of wrongs, I am done with ledgers, but of continuity. Continuity looked like this. Michael at my stove making pancakes, one bad, and then suddenly many good. Emma stretched on the new rug reading aloud, her voice doing all the characters and me pretending I couldn't tell. Noah counting V's out loud, losing his place on purpose because he likes the sound of 50. Ruth on my porch with 2 pastries, neither almond. Rosamund climbing, blooming, resting, repeating. Detective Singh texting me a single word every so often, update, followed by a line or two that kept the bureaucracy from draining the meaning out of the case. Appeal denied. Restitution schedule set. Manner of death amended. One afternoon in late summer, I watched sunlight spill through the glass and onto the floor in a perfect rectangle, like a sheet you could fold. In its center lay a small shadow, the flash drive, just where I had set it down after making yet another copy and labeling it for the safe. I picked it up and thumbed its blunt edge and remembered the sentence I had whispered to myself the night I fell. Not like this. That sentence had turned out to be a key. People ask, if they're the kind of people who are allowed to ask, whether I hate Claudia. I don't have the appetite for hate. I prefer work. I prefer to look at a screw and think about torque and about why someone once taught me to turn a wrist clockwise and then counterclockwise just to make sure nothing was going to give. I prefer to stand at a second floor and feel the sturdy of glass and to know it is both barrier and welcome. Some evenings I take the kids to their house and we sit in their yard and we eat on paper plates because I am done with dishes after 7. Michael and I talk about rules we lived under that we can now retire. We invent new ones that are less about control and more about care. We tell the truth. And when bedtime requires a ritual that keeps the dark sweet, I let the children choose the story. Often they choose the one about the night Grandma landed in roses and the moon got arrested. They like that I call him that. They like that the knight can be a character in a story where it is caught doing wrong and then persuaded to behave. On the first cold morning of fall, I tied Emma's scarf around her neck and she wore it like regalia. It keeps my words warm, she announced gravely. That evening I finished Noah's in sober blue and held it to my face and breathed in the smell of the wool and the house and the light. I realize now that revenge, the word I had been given at the beginning of this, is too hungry for what I wanted. What I wanted was retribution and repair. Retribution is a legal word that says the world remembers itself. Repair is a domestic word that says we do, too. The law did its part. The house did mine. It held when it had every reason not to. It taught me, again, that safety is not the absence of danger, it is the presence of attention. On an ordinary Tuesday, months from the night I learned the taste of roses, I took my knitting to the nook and opened the new bookcase and pulled out an old VHS case labeled Emma's Dance Recital. Inside lay the extra flash drive, snug in its plastic carriage. I smiled. I no longer needed it close. I thanked it like an old friend and placed it carefully in the lockbox with passports and the deed and the letters that matter. I put the dance case back where it belonged, among the cooking, food and memory, heat and discipline. That is life. The phone rang. Not bad news. A number from the community center. They wanted to know if I'd volunteer for a series of talks for seniors about home safety and paperwork. I said yes, because I've learned that the stories that save us are never the ones we meant to star in. The first evening, I will bring lemon cake. I will tell them about temporary rails without telling them how to build them. I will tell them about notaries and names and how a signature is a promise even when the person holding the pen doesn't believe anything is real. I will tell them to write down what I have / what they can't change and to keep the second list longer. Before I go to bed, I sometimes stand in the sun rectangle, even when it is only moonlight painting the floor, and I say the names of those who brought me here. Tom, whose kindness made him vulnerable but not foolish. Claudia, whose efficiency became a trap for herself. The man with the moon, who taught me that there are people on the other end of stories who are less interesting than the myths they sell. Janelle, who loved the idea of profit more than the work of it and will now have time to learn the difference. Michael, my boy, whom I did not raise to be a hero and who became one anyway by being steady when it would have been easier to run. Emma and Noah, whose questions keep my house from growing old in the wrong ways. Ruth, who wears information like armor and knows when to bring bagels. Detective Singh, who thinks in verbs and stands in rooms like a person who believes in usable truth. And the roses. I thank them every time. I know it sounds sentimental. I am allowed. The day the last court date ended, the appeal denied, the restitution schedule approved, the phrase final judgment, I came home and opened every window. The house breathed. I took the scones Janelle had brought on the night it could have ended and, having long since thrown them out, replaced them with fresh bread from the bakery, the kind with the thick crust that sounds like applause when you slice it. I spread warm butter. I ate. Then I poured tea for whoever was left, my son, my grandchildren, Ruth, Linda, the neighbor's teen who came to fix the Wi-Fi without being asked, because that is how we live now, connected and bewildered and very capable when we let ourselves be. At sunset, the light came through the glass and laid itself across the floor exactly where I once fell. I stepped into it, bent, and placed my palm flat against the wood. I felt the hum of something that is not mystical, but is no less beautiful for being ordinary, a house doing its job. A life continuing. A story concluded without forgetting how to begin. Once, in the first minutes of this, I thought revenge was falling and making sure someone else fell farther. I see now it is the opposite. It is choosing not to fall when pushed, and then building a railing so no one else gets the chance to try. I raised my hand and looked through the clear pane that bears a tiny engraving at its base. The maker's mark art insisted on and I signed off. Sunlight. The garden shone. Rosamund lifted her face. I am 64 years old. I knit too tightly when I'm nervous. My second floor is a room where a wall once wasn't and is again, and if you stand there in the morning, the light is so honest you can see the dust before it settles. In that light, the truth doesn't have to shout. It only has to stand. And when it stands, the world does too.
So, another story of my grandmother has sent, and be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.